The docking bay smelled faintly of burned ozone and fresh metal polish. Captain Rylan Voss stepped off his small freighter and into the high-ceilinged hall of the Vir-Elan capital station. His boots echoed against the smooth silver floor as he scanned the crowd. He wasn't here for trade or trouble this time. He was here to meet his new wife. It still felt strange to think about. The marriage had been sealed only a week ago, a political bond between his small human colony and the Vir-Elan royal family. It wasn't a romance, at least not yet, but there was a sense of respect between him and Lady Cirella Vir-Elan, the elegant alien diplomat who now wore the title of his wife. He spotted her near the far end of the hall, standing out even among the crowd. Her tall, graceful frame and shimmering pale skin caught the light, her ceremonial robe flowing like liquid silver. When her eyes met his, a warm smile curved her lips, though he could tell by the tilt of her head that something was on her mind. "Rylan," she greeted, her voice carrying that musical tone her species was known for. "I'm glad you came. Quickly." Her words felt heavier than they sounded. "What's wrong?" he asked. Instead of answering, she gestured toward the private corridor. "Come. We should talk where no ears listen." They walked in silence until they reached her private suite overlooking the station's gardens. The moment the doors slid shut, she turned to him. "I have a request, one I never thought I would make." Rylan set his bag down. "If it's about trade routes or politics, It is not," she cut in, stepping closer. "It is personal, and it is for my sister." He raised an eyebrow. "Your sister?" Cirella's expression softened. "Linara is younger than me. She has just come of age in our culture, but she has been sheltered her entire life, shielded from other species. She knows nothing of human males. This lack of understanding will harm her in the future." Rylan wasn't sure where she was going with this. "And you want me to?" "I want you to help her," Cirella said plainly, "not just with words. I want her to experience the presence of a human male, to understand how you think, act, react, to learn in a way that no book or lecture can teach her." Rylan blinked. "That's unusual." "It is necessary," she replied firmly. "Our people's future alliances may depend on it. If Linara cannot connect with humans, she may fail in her role." He crossed his arms. "You're asking me to spend time alone with her, to let her study me?" "Yes." "Closely," Cirella said, her gaze steady, and without limits to her questions or observations. Before he could respond, the suite's inner door slid open. A younger woman stepped inside, and Rylan immediately knew she was Cirella's sister. Linara was striking, in a different way. Her features softer, her eyes wide with curiosity. Her silver-toned skin caught the light like polished stone, and her hair, long and faintly iridescent, shifted colors as she moved. She wore a simple robe, but her posture was confident. "This is him?" she asked, her voice lighter and more playful than her sister's. "This is Captain Rylan Voss," Cirella confirmed. "Your teacher in this matter." Linara's gaze swept over him from head to toe, not shy in the least. "You look stronger than I expected. Humans always seem smaller in the hollows." Rylan cleared his throat. "I suppose I should take that as a compliment." Cirella stepped between them. "Linara, remember, this is for learning, not games. You will respect him and his boundaries." The younger sister tilted her head. "Of course, but I intend to learn everything I can." Something in her tone made Rylan's pulse quicken. Not out of fear, but out of the sudden realization that this was going to be far more complicated than he thought. Cirella placed a hand on his arm. "Will you do this for me, Rylan? For us?" He looked from Cirella's steady gaze to Linara's curious eyes. He thought about the strange political marriage he'd entered, the trust Cirella had placed in him, and the potential consequences of refusing. Finally, he nodded once. "All right, I'll help her understand." Linara's lips curved into a slow smile. "Good. Then we begin now." Rylan wasn't sure what he'd just agreed to, But as the younger alien stepped closer, he knew one. The garden air was warm, filled with the soft hum of distant machinery that kept the artificial sky glowing. Rylan sat on a bench made from smooth white stone, watching Linara pace slowly in front of him. Her eyes were fixed on him like a scientist, studying a rare creature. Sorella had left them alone only moments ago, saying she had a diplomatic call to attend. Now it was just the two of them, and the silence felt heavier with each passing second. "So," Linara began at last, "my sister says humans think differently, that your instincts are stronger." Rylan raised an eyebrow. "Stronger than what?" "Stronger than Varelians," she said simply. "I want to know what that means. Show me." He leaned back on the bench. "That's a big question. We'd have to start with the basics." Her eyes lit with curiosity. "Then start. How does a human male react when someone challenges him?" "That depends on the challenge," Rylan replied. "We're adaptable. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we fight, sometimes we walk away." She frowned. "That's vague. Show me how you'd react if I challenged you." Before he could answer, she stepped closer, so close he could see the faint shimmer of light in her skin and the changing hues in her hair. "You don't seem dangerous," she said softly. "Not yet." He gave a short laugh. "I'm not here to be dangerous. I'm here to teach." "Teaching without demonstration is hollow," she replied. Her hand reached toward his chest, pressing lightly against his jacket. "I want to see the shift in your eyes when your instincts rise." Rylan caught her wrist gently but firmly. "Lesson 1. Humans have boundaries. If you cross them without permission, you'll get a reaction." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. That was the first real thing you've shown me." He released her wrist and leaned back again. "You like testing people, don't you?" "It tells me who they are," she said. "Words can be lies. Actions can't." The conversation drifted to questions about human history, body language, and even voice tone. She was relentless, asking about the smallest details: why humans tilted their heads when curious, why their pupils changed size, why their breathing shifted with emotion. At one point, she walked around him slowly, circling like a predator. "You notice everything I do," she observed. "That's called awareness," Rylan said. "In dangerous places, it keeps you alive. And in safe places," he met her gaze, "it keeps you from being surprised." Her eyes narrowed in thought. "So you never stop watching?" "Never," he said without hesitation. For a moment, she simply studied him, and the silence between them grew thicker. Then she sat beside him, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. "I think I'm starting to understand. You don't just react. You measure. You decide. And when you decide, you commit completely." Rylan gave a slow nod. "That's about right," she smiled faintly. "Then I want to see what happens when you decide something about me." He chuckled. "Careful what you ask for." Their lesson ended when Sorella returned, her presence breaking the strange energy between them. "How goes the first lesson?" she asked. Linara stood. "He is more interesting than I expected." Sorella gave Rylan a look he couldn't quite read. "Good. Tomorrow you'll learn how humans handle loyalty. That lesson will take you beyond words." Rylan wasn't sure what she meant, but the glint in Linara's eyes told him one thing: this was only the beginning. The next morning, the station's outer docks were alive with the movement of ships. Cargo haulers drifted in on quiet thrusters, while sleek patrol craft glided between them like predators among prey. Rylan stood near the loading ramp of his freighter, checking the seals on the cargo hold when Sorella and Linara arrived. Linara was dressed differently today. Instead of a flowing robe, she wore a fitted travel suit with light armor plates across her shoulders and chest. Her silver skin and iridescent hair caught the light with each step. She looked ready for something far more serious than garden conversation. Sorella wasted no time. "Rylan, today's lesson is loyalty, and it will not be taught in comfort." He closed the panel he'd been working on. "Where are we going?" "Outpost 9, she replied. It's a small trade hub in a neutral zone. I have contacts there who will help stage the scenario. He frowned. Scenario? Sorella stepped closer. Linara needs to see how a human acts when their loyalty is tested under pressure. Words will not be enough. She must see you choose between yourself, your allies, and your principles. Rylan glanced at Linara, who was already watching him closely. And what exactly am I supposed to be loyal to? That, Sorella said, will become clear. The trip to Outpost 9 took 3 hours in warp. Rylan spent most of it in the cockpit while Linara sat beside him, asking quiet but pointed questions about human crew bonds, risk-taking, and decision-making. Finally, the outpost came into view, a sprawling structure built into an asteroid, its exterior dotted with mismatched docking platforms. The place looked old, patched together from decades of repairs. They docked, and Sorella stayed behind on the ship, saying she had arrangements to finalize. Rylan and Linara stepped into the dimly lit corridors of the station, the air heavy, with the scent of recycled oxygen and engine grease. It didn't take long before things went sideways. 2 figures stepped out from a side passage blocking their way. Both were tall reptilian aliens with scaled hides and long, sharp teeth. Their armor was worn but functional, and each carried a shock rifle. Human, the one on the left hissed. We've been told you're worth something. Rylan shifted, his stance keeping Linara behind him. Told by who? Doesn't matter, the alien said with a grin. What matters is that we can sell you, or trade you. Linara's voice was calm, almost amused. You're going to test him like this? Rylan glanced back at her. This isn't part of the plan? She shook her head. Not mine. The reptilian on the right took a step forward. Hand over the girl, human, and we might let you walk away. Linara tilted her head. So now, we see. Will you leave me to save yourself? Rylan didn't even think. He stepped forward, putting himself directly in the path of the 2 aliens. Not happening. The first alien aimed his rifle, but Rylan was faster. He grabbed the barrel, yanked it aside, and drove his fist into the alien's jaw. The second one lunged, but Rylan pivoted, slamming his shoulder into the attacker's chest and knocking him into the wall. Linara stayed back but watched with sharp eyes as Rylan disarmed the first alien, tossed the rifle away, and delivered a knee strike that sent the second one to the floor. Both attackers scrambled to their feet and fled, snarling as they disappeared into the maze of corridors. Rylan turned to Linara. You all right? She nodded slowly. Yes, and now I understand something important. What's that? You didn't hesitate. You didn't weigh the cost or look for an easier way out. You just acted. That's loyalty, he said, simply, to the people you choose to protect. They returned to the ship where Sorella was waiting. Her expression shifted as she saw them. Linara unharmed, Rylan calm but alert. Well? Sorella asked her sister. Linara's voice was steady. He didn't even consider leaving me. Not for a second. Sorella's gaze softened as she looked at Rylan. Good. Then the next lesson will be about trust. And for that, we will have to go somewhere far more dangerous. Rylan sighed. Of course we will. The ship left Outpost 9 behind, gliding through the dark lanes of space toward a system Rylan had never visited. The coordinates Sorella had given him pointed to a barren world in the shadow of a dying star. According to the nav charts, it was called Varus 4, a planet with little atmosphere, jagged terrain, and no recorded settlements. Rylan sat in the cockpit, hands on the controls, while Sorella explained from the rear seat. This planet will give us the right environment for the trust lesson. There will be no stations, no trade routes, no friendly ships within range. That sounds like a place people go to disappear, Rylan said dryly. Sorella's tone didn't change. Exactly, and you will take Linara down there alone. He turned in his seat. Wait, alone? Yes, she said firmly. I will remain in orbit. You and my sister will be dropped on the surface with minimal supplies. You will be given a location to reach, and you must rely on each other to get there. Linara was standing just behind Sorella, already wearing a light exploration suit. "I like this idea," she said with a faint smile. "We'll see if the human can truly put his life in my hands." Ryland's eyes narrowed. "You mean my life and yours?" Her smile widened. "Yes, that's the point." The descent to Varus 4 was rough. Dust storms swirled across the surface, and jagged cliffs rose like broken teeth from the barren ground. They landed near a cluster of black rock spires, the ship's landing strut sinking slightly into the loose sand. Sorella handed Ryland a small device before they stepped out. "This beacon will lead you to the rendezvous point. It is 30 kilometers from here. There is no direct path. The storms will interfere with the signal, so you must keep checking it." "And if we run into trouble?" Ryland asked. "You will handle it," Sorella said simply. "I will be watching from orbit." The hatch closed behind them, and the roar of the dust storm swallowed the sound of the engines as the ship lifted away. Ryland adjusted his helmet seals and turned to Linara. "Stay close. Visibility is going to be bad." They started across the open ground, the beacon's screen flickering with interference. The wind tugged at their suits, and fine sand stung any exposed skin. For the first hour they moved in silence, climbing over uneven ground and weaving through narrow rock canyons. But when they stopped to check the beacon, Linara spoke. "You trust the device too much." Ryland frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "If it fails, you'll be lost," she said. "You should trust your own sense of direction more." He pocketed the beacon and looked at her. "Then lead the way." She tilted her head. "Just like that? You'd follow me without question?" "I'm here to finish the lesson," he said. "If that means trusting you, I'll do it." She studied him for a moment before turning to climb the next ridge. "Then try to keep up." The terrain grew steeper, and the wind howled through the narrow passes. More than once, Ryland had to grab Linara's arm to steady her against the gusts. In return, she caught him when loose rock gave way under his boots. Neither of them spoke about it, but with each near fall, the unspoken trust between them grew stronger. Halfway through the second hour, they heard something over the wind, a low, guttural sound, like a growl carried on the storm. Ryland raised a hand, signaling Linara to stop. From behind a jagged boulder, a creature stepped into view. It was tall, thin, and covered in overlapping plates of bone-like armor. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dusty air, and its mouth opened to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Let me guess," Ryland muttered. "Local wildlife." The creature crouched, muscles tensing. Without a word, Linara pulled a compact blade from her belt and moved to flank it. Ryland drew his sidearm, keeping the creature's attention on him. When it lunged, he fired a shot that struck its shoulder, spinning it toward Linara. She moved with precision, slashing across its exposed leg joint, dropping it to the ground. The creature hissed once, then fled into the dust. Ryland lowered his weapon. "Not bad. You didn't hesitate to fight beside me," Linara said, her voice even. "And you didn't hesitate to have my back," he replied. By the time they reached the rendezvous point, their suits were coated in dust, their muscles aching. Sorella was waiting near the ship's ramp, her eyes moving between them. "Well?" she asked. Linara's expression was unreadable for a moment before she spoke. "He trusted me, even when the beacon could have led us faster, and I trusted him to fight at my side." Sorella gave a small, satisfied nod. "Then the lesson is complete. Next, you will learn sacrifice." Ryland sighed. "Somehow I think I'm not going to like this one." The ship left Varus 4 behind, its engines humming steadily as they traveled toward the next set of coordinates. Ryland sat in the cockpit with Sorella and Linara, scanning the star map. "This system," Sorella explained, "is home to an abandoned mining facility. It was once used by my people, but it's been left to decay for decades. There are dangerous areas, unstable structures, gas pockets, and faulty systems. That is where we will go." Ryland's brow furrowed. "Let me guess. This is part of the next lesson?" "Yes," Sorella said calmly. Linara will see how far you will go to protect someone else, even if it costs you dearly. Linara glanced at her sister. And how exactly will you test that? Sorella met her gaze. You will both be placed in a situation where only one can be saved. I want to see what the human chooses. Rylan let out a slow breath. I'm starting to think your definition of teaching is just putting me in situations where I could die. That is the only way to know what is true, Sorella replied, without a hint of humor. They reached the mining facility an hour later. The structure floated in orbit around a small dim planet, its metal framework twisted and broken in places. Docking clamps groaned as Rylan's ship latched onto one of the intact ports. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The corridors were dimly lit by flickering strips of light, and the floor plates rattled with every step. This place is falling apart, Rylan muttered. That is the point, Sorella said as she led them toward a deeper section. They reached a large chamber filled with old mining equipment and unstable walkways suspended over a deep shaft. The air smelled faintly of chemicals. Sorella stopped at the entrance. From here, you two will go alone. I will observe from the ship. Follow the marked path to the control platform. There, you will find a data module. Bring it back. Rylan and Linara crossed the first walkway slowly, the metal groaning under their weight. The shaft below disappeared into darkness, and a faint hiss of gas echoed through the chamber. Halfway across the second walkway, the structure shuddered violently. One of the support beams snapped with a sharp metallic crack. The walkway tilted and Linara stumbled toward the edge. Without thinking, Rylan lunged forward, catching her arm just as she began to fall. The sudden pull dragged him closer to the edge, his boots skidding on the unstable metal. "Let go!" Linara shouted. "You'll fall too!" "Not happening," Rylan growled, tightening his grip. The walkway creaked, the broken support groaning under the strain. Rylan glanced around desperately. If he pulled her up, the shift in weight might collapse the whole section. The only way to stabilize it would be to let himself drop, taking the pressure off the damaged beam. Linara's eyes widened as she realized what he was thinking. "No, you can't. Lessons about sacrifice, right?" he said with a faint grin. "Then, here's your answer." With a sharp movement, he pushed Linara up toward the safer section, using the force to throw himself backward over the edge. She screamed his name, but his body was already falling into the darkness. The impact never came. Instead, a jolt of energy wrapped around him, slowing his fall until he was lowered onto a small platform far below. The blue glow of a Virellan gravity field flickered and faded as Sorella's voice came through his comm. "Interesting choice, Captain," she said evenly. "You gave up your safety without hesitation." Rylan coughed and looked up into the shadows above. "So this was staged?" "Only the field," Sorella replied. "The walkway was truly unstable. Your choice was real." Linara appeared on the upper walkway, her face pale. She dropped to one knee, gripping the railing. "I told you not to do that, and I told you I wouldn't let go," he said. Her expression shifted, confusion, frustration, and something else she didn't voice. She stood, walking quickly toward the control platform. "Let's finish this." When they returned to the ship, Sorella studied them both carefully. The next lesson will not be about loyalty, trust, or sacrifice. It will be about understanding. Linara must see the heart of a human, not in danger, but in peace. Rylan arched an eyebrow. "After everything you've put me through, I'm not sure I remember what peace looks like." Sorella's lips curved faintly. "Then you will have to show her anyway." The next destination was nothing like the last. No dust storms, no collapsing walkways, no ambushes in dim corridors. Instead, the ship descended toward a quiet green world, its surface dotted with lakes and long stretches of wildflower meadows. From the cockpit, Rylan looked down at the view. "This doesn't look like your usual lesson location." Sorella, seated behind him, smiled faintly. "It's not. This time there will be no danger. The goal is for my sister to understand not just what humans will do in a fight, but what they are when the fight is over. Rylan gave her a sideways glance. So you want her to see what? Me relaxing? Yes, she said simply. That is when you show your true self. Lynera, standing near the viewport, didn't comment, but her eyes were fixed on the lakes below. It's beautiful. I've never been somewhere like this. They landed near the edge of one of the lakes, the ship's ramp lowering onto soft grass. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of flowers. A breeze rippled across the water, catching the sunlight in flashes. Cirella remained on the ship, leaving Rylan and Lynera to walk the shoreline. The grass brushed their boots as they followed a narrow path that curved along the water's edge. For a while, they said nothing. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel heavy, just present. Eventually, Lynera broke it. Every time I've seen you until now, she said, you've been ready to fight. Always tense, like you're expecting trouble. Rylan glanced at her. That's how I was trained, always expect it. It's how you stay alive. But here, she said, looking around, there's no threat. No enemies. Do you still feel the same? He thought for a moment. Old habits die hard. But this place does make it easier to breathe. They stopped near a cluster of smooth stones by the lake. Rylan crouched down, picked one up, and flicked it across the water. It skipped 3 times before sinking. What was that? Lynera asked, stepping closer. Skipping stones, he said. It's something human kids do near lakes or rivers. You throw it just right so it bounces across the water. She crouched beside him, picking up a flat stone. Like this? Her first throw sent the stone straight into the lake with a loud splash. She frowned. Rylan chuckled. Not bad for a first try. Here. He moved behind her, guiding her hand. You want to angle it so it hits the water flat, not point first, and flick your wrist at the end. She glanced back at him briefly before focusing on the lake. With his guidance, the stone skipped twice before sinking. A small smile tugged at her lips. Better. They spent the next few minutes in a quiet rhythm, finding stones, throwing them, sharing small bits of conversation. It felt different from everything before. There was no rush, no urgency. At one point, Lynera asked, "Why did you agree to my sister's request?" Rylan hesitated. Because she asked, and because I thought maybe it could help our 2 people understand each other better. If you know what I'm like, maybe you'll know what to expect from others like me. And now? She asked softly. He looked out over the water. Now I think I'm just glad we came here. Glad I get to see this side of you too. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment before she turned back to the lake. You're not what I expected from a human male. He smirked. Good or bad? Different, she said, and there was something almost warm in her tone. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the lake. They walked back toward the ship as the breeze cooled. Lynera didn't rush ahead or stay behind. She walked beside him, matching his pace. When they reached the ramp, Cirella was waiting. Her eyes moved between them, reading more than either of them said. I think the lesson went well, she said. Rylan shrugged lightly. You'll have to ask her. Lynera met her sister's gaze. I learned something important. Humans are not only defined by what they do in danger, but by what they are when there is none. Cirella smiled faintly. Then the final lesson will come easily. Rylan raised an eyebrow. Final lesson? Yes, Cirella said. Tomorrow you will face the choice that will decide whether Lynera truly understands you, or not at all. The next morning the ship drifted in the calm black between stars. Rylan stood in the cockpit sipping from a metal mug when Cirella entered. Her expression was calm, but there was a sharpness in her eyes. Today, she said, is the last lesson. Lynera will face a situation where she must see the core of you, not your skill, not your strength, But your choice when everything matters. Rylan lowered the mug. And how exactly do you plan to pull that off? Sorella didn't answer right away. Instead, she called Lenara to join them. The younger sister stepped into the cockpit, her hair catching the soft light, her gaze curious, but alert. Sorella looked at both of them. There is a signal from a nearby ship, small, old, and drifting without power. No crew response. We will approach. They left warp to find a battered transport ship, its hull scorched and scarred. It floated silently, a dark shadow against the stars. This isn't a lesson, Rylan said, eyes narrowing. That ship's dead, and if it's not, something bad happened. Exactly, Sorella replied. You and Lenara will go aboard. The final choice will reveal itself there. They suited up and crossed over in a narrow shuttle. The airlock creaked open into a dim corridor lit only by flickering emergency lights. The smell of burnt wiring filled the air. As they moved deeper inside, Lenara spoke quietly. I can hear a faint hum. Life support still active. Means someone might still be alive, Rylan said. They found them in the crew quarters. 3 injured passengers, 2 adults, and a young boy, all pale and barely conscious. Their oxygen supply was dangerously low. Rylan crouched beside the boy, checking his vitals. They won't make it here much longer. We'll have to carry them to the shuttle. Lenara glanced toward the corridor. The path back. It's blocked. Rylan followed her gaze. A section of the hallway had collapsed, sealing the way they came. Only one narrow access tube led to the shuttle now, barely wide enough for 2 people at a time and fragile enough that it might not hold much weight. Lenara looked at him steadily. We can make one trip before it collapses for good. Rylan understood instantly. One trip meant he could only take either Lenara or the injured passengers. The silence between them was heavy. Lenara's voice was calm, but her eyes searched. His face. This is it, isn't it? The lesson. He didn't hesitate. They go first, her brow furrowed. Even if it means you stay behind? Yes, he said simply. If I can save them, that's what I'll do. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then I know what I needed to know. They worked quickly, loading the boy and the 2 adults into the tube. Lenara went with them to steady their path. As she reached the shuttle, the access tube groaned and tore away from the damaged section, sealing Rylan on the other side. The ship's floor shook under his boots as the hull shifted. His comm crackled with Lenara's voice. Rylan, hold on, I'm coming back for you. You won't make it through twice, he said, glancing at the growing cracks in the bulkhead. You have to leave. Not without you, she replied, sharply. The line went silent for a moment. Then he heard her voice again, firm and sure. You didn't give up on me before. I'm not giving up on you now. A minute later, she appeared in the jagged opening where the tube had torn free, a length of cable in her hands. Grab on. He didn't argue. They moved fast, the hull groaning louder with every step. They leapt into the shuttle just as the transport behind them tore apart, vanishing into the void. Inside, Rylan sat against the wall, catching his breath. Lenara knelt in front of him, eyes locked on his. Now I understand. He gave her a faint smile. Understand what? That humans don't just protect the people they care about, she said. They protect strangers too, even when there's nothing to gain. That's what makes you different. Sorella's voice came from the cockpit. Lesson complete. Lenara helped Rylan to his feet. No, it's more than complete. It's personal now. Rylan glanced between them, but didn't press. Whatever Sorella's real reason had been for this arrangement, he knew it had changed. As the shuttle carried them back toward the main ship, Lenara sat beside him, the tension of the past days replaced with something calmer. She looked ahead into the stars and said quietly, Thank you, Rylan, for everything. He leaned back in his seat. Guess you understand human males now? Her lips curved in a faint smile. I understand you. That's enough.